We have a bit of drama. Oh, you know how to piss a guitar player off? Tell them they can't do something. No, better yet, tell them that they're stupid for doing something. Here's the headline. Toto's Lukather says tabs don't make sense. Compares notation in tabs to playing real guitar and playing Guitar Hero. Kind of a weird headline, doesn't really make sense. What he's saying is if you read tab, then it's like you play Guitar Hero versus if you read music, then you can actually play the guitar. Bad analogy, we'll start there. I agree with some of what Steve says though. I mean, I've made a video about how tabs are kind of bad for guitar players. I think that's also his sentiment, but it comes off a little harsh and I disagree with his delivery and maybe a couple other things in this interview. But hey, at the end of the day, Steve's speaking his truth and he's one of the greatest guitar players ever. He is seriously, like, if you don't know about Steve Lukather, just listen to the isolated guitar track to Rosanna, the ending guitar solo. So awesome. But you know, every time one of these older school guitar players sounds off on something that really, this isn't a youth thing. Tab is used by all ages. I don't think this interview necessarily represents Steve as a person. I don't think he would be an arrogant jerk in real life necessarily. I think he might be a little on the zany side, but that's cool. I mean, why would you want someone to be super straight edge, especially a rock star like that? So with all this said, let's dive into some of Steve's words. I'll give you my 2 cents as to what I think he's trying to say and maybe how he could have worded something differently, and ultimately the truth about music notation versus tabs and where they all fit in for guitar players of all skill levels and ages. So the ultimate guitar person asks Steve Lukather, "You're not a tab user, are you?" So that's a great move. It's kind of baiting him, right? Steve responds, "No, tab doesn't even make sense to me." Okay, I'm gonna stop right there. Tab doesn't make sense to you? I mean, what do you mean it doesn't make sense to you? It's like the easiest thing in the world for a guitar player. Like, one of the very first lessons that I teach in the beginner's corner of Guitar Super System, which is my learning platform, is how to read tabs. I think they're extremely important and also very easy to understand. So maybe a different choice of words there. Steve goes on to say, why would you learn that if you can learn how to read music? I look at tablature and reading music the same way you look at playing real guitar and playing Guitar Hero. So he's saying if you read tabs, then you're not really playing the guitar, which is inherently wrong, but I get what he's trying to say. It's just kind of a weak analogy. If you're taking all that time to learn the game, Guitar Hero, why don't you go on to learn how to play the guitar at the end of it? It's the same thing to me. Why would you do that? A lot of people live by it. Talks about the Nashville number system. It's easier to change keys, but it's a drag when you have altered chords. I think nobody who knows the Nashville number system has a problem with altered chords, but that's just my 2 cents living here in Nashville and dealing with some ridiculous guitar players. But I do get what he's saying in that if you're gonna spend a lot of time doing something, just do it right the first time, and he considers doing it right reading music instead of using tablature. And I think that there's a time and a place to read sheet music, but it is not at the beginning of your guitar playing career for the most part. I learned to read music right when I started guitar, and it was not fun. I was playing kind of lame melodies like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, Mary Had a Little Lamb, just kind of learning the notes. I learned Smoke on the Water and Back in Black and things like that, mainly by ear, but I would use tabs to kind of fill in the gaps, and it was so much faster and it facilitated quick and easy learning for somebody who had no idea what was going on. So I think the rote approach to learning how to read music is valuable, but not nearly as valuable as getting your hands on the instrument every single day as a beginning player and developing your muscle memory. So tabs by far are more important in the beginning and, you know, intermediate stages of your guitar life than reading music ever will be. Now keep in mind, these are all just my opinions. As emphatic as I may utter them, these are all just my opinions. Like I said, I agree with Steve's sentiment here. He goes on to ask a question that I've asked myself on my Guitar Villains podcast, which I would love to have Steve on. He seems like a perfect guitar villain, especially with this article. The interviewer says, I've heard at times as a guitar instructor that learning music theory makes you stale and takes the soul out of a song. Obviously, you guys know my thoughts on this, and Steve nails it here. He says, bullshit. If anything, it has really helped my playing, especially back in the day when I had to come up with parts on the spot. They just give you a chord symbol, count out the tune, you're supposed to come up with something brilliant on the spot. Now, we can't all come up with something brilliant on the spot thought just because we know music theory, but it absolutely helps. It's a tool to make you a better player. It allows you to access parts of your musical vocabulary that would otherwise either be inaccessible forever because you don't really know what you're doing from a theoretical perspective, or it just allows you to access your potential quicker. That's really the name of the game, especially for someone like Steve, who is like a monster session player in the midst of being in Toto. So that is really his train of thought, is if you can't deliver right away in the studio, then you're not going to get called back. You're not going to get another gig. So he's treating it like a professional guitar player would treat it, and music theory is essential for professionals to get work. And any session guitar player will tell you that. You don't necessarily have to know how to read music, but you definitely have to know how to read charts, and you have to be able to come up with complementary pieces of music that go along with the music in a way that most guitar players, I'll say most, wouldn't just be able to do with their ear. And he says a really smart thing here. He emphasizes music as a language. Just like he also mentions, if you go to France, you would do well to learn French, because then you can speak the language and kind of get along easier there. If you speak the language of music, aka no music theory, you're gonna be a better player in no matter what instrument you play. It doesn't sap your soul, it gives you more access to a larger area of your soul. And it's also important to emphasize, you don't have to know a lot of music theory. In fact, what he's talking about here, just knowing your common tones, your relative majors and minors, simple dumb shit you learn right away, this is all right on the money. You don't have to know a ton to be able to use it in a ton of different ways. You don't have to be able to play triad inversions through all string sets and open and closed voicings and 3-octave harmonic major scales. You don't have to know all that. You just need to know the major scale. Honestly, that's it. And that is 90% of music theory. That's all you really ever need to use in order to play pretty much any type of music out there. When you get deep into hyper dense harmony and things like that, then it's helpful to know all the exotic stuff. But in the end, the major scale is everything. That is the foundation of what I teach and what a lot of my instructor peers kind of rely on, is the major scale. And the thing about this article that I think it kind of gets Steve in hot water is the headline is bashing guitar players across the world who use tab. That's not how you get through to people, and it sucks that it's the kind of hot take that buries up this very important point about how music theory is very useful and it does not sap your soul as a musician. Although I don't think that's really contentious at all. I think at this point, anyone who thinks music theory will make you a lesser musician doesn't know what they're talking about anyway, and I think that's a very small minority in the guitar community. And he also mentions here, look, I am not gonna bash like Eddie Van Halen or Jeff Beck or anybody who doesn't really know music theory, to each their own, but like I said, the headline kind of gives the wrong impression, and I can tell you 99%, I would say 98 to 99% of guitar players don't know how to read music. So when you tell them that the method that they use to play the music that they love, to play the guitar, play the instrument they love, is wrong, and they might as well be playing a video game and they aren't actually playing that instrument that they love, well, it doesn't really matter what you say after that, because you're an asshole. So that's my perspective. That's what I take away from this headline, even though I knew immediately what he was trying to say, because I'm kind of in this world and I can understand why Ultimate Guitar and Guitar World, all these other outlets who picked it up, will lead with that headline because it's gonna get clicks, and I'm gonna make a video about it and spread it even further. But I'm just kind of maybe trying to clear up a little bit of what Steve was trying to say, and hopefully he's not put into that bucket of just angry old guitar players. He did say something kind of silly about how his son shouldn't be a shredder because there's already too many of those. I think the person can decide for themselves what they want to be, and if it's shredding, then great. It doesn't matter if there's a lot of them. I mean, there's a lot of blues guitar players. You're gonna tell them not to be a blues guitar player? I mean, that's kind of silly, but anyway, I get the sentiment of Steve's perspective, but I think maybe it could have been packaged slightly differently in order to reach the audience in a way that wouldn't enrage them and turn them into a mob with flaming torches
saying, Toto sucks, Toto sucks.
Not everybody takes the same path, and reading music is extremely fulfilling. It's really cool to be able to open a book and just play somebody's music. Tablature can feel like that though, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think tab is just something that people can rest on their laurels a little bit by using, and also tab is wrong a lot of the time, and it can just make you learn stuff that isn't right. But at the end of the day, it's just playing music, and if you have your hands on the guitar, then it doesn't matter what got you there. It just matters that you keep playing and developing, and eventually, hopefully, you find your own voice. So I hope you enjoyed this little reaction to Steve's words. I think he's an awesome guitar player, and I think he's full of passion, just like me. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about this whole topic of tablature versus music notation and how to learn? What was your process when you were starting out? Let me know, I'd love to hear from you. Until next time.